Harbor, welcome to the charging station. We have successfully completed the end of 2022 and we are looking forward to everything God has in store for us for 2023. But the Bible tells us to remember where we came from, and so in honor of that, we're going to go back and do some of our greatest hits in the charging station. So I hope you enjoy this as we get ready to do everything God has in store for us in 2023.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Charging Station. I am here with Pastor John. How are you doing?
I am doing well. It's so good to be with you. It seems like it's been a minute since the two of us have been together.
It definitely has. Yeah, we've had some wonderful times this summer. I know the ladies did a series. I say the ladies. We had 4 ladies do a series called This Is Us.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for them because, it's one thing to sit at home and watch these. It's something else to be right here doing it. And for them to sacrifice their time and even their comfort level to be able to share something as vulnerable as their story is really remarkable. Yeah. And Bay Harbor, thank you for encouraging them. Here recently, just in the hallway, there was an exchange that went on where I just walked up and one of you was encouraging one of the ladies that presented. And of course, I jumped in the middle of it, but it was good to see. And it just gives you a snapshot of how blessed we are at Bay Harbor with some wonderful people.
Absolutely, it is. And if you're happen to miss any of these, you can go back on our podcast, YouTube channel, many different ways. Check it out. Look up the Charging Station. It's been great. Hey, we want to jump right into it, though.
What do you have for us today? Well, where we heading?
The vision.
Okay.
This summer, Pastor, you have been nailing down the vision. I say nailing down the vision. I don't like saying it like that because let me just back up a little bit. The vision here at Bay Harbor has been a discussion amongst the staff members and even other people within the church for many years.
Yeah.
And we have been trying our best to find out a way to communicate it to people.
Yes.
Hasn't changed a bit.
No. And that's really what's blown my mind with it is the more that we've sought the Lord, I'm talking about through prayer and through fasting and seeking and consultation, we've come right back to around to where it has been the whole time. And I think that's important. For me, there are those moments of evaluation within my own spiritual life. Why are you doing what you're doing? How are you doing at what you're doing? And what could you be doing differently to be more effective?
Absolutely.
And so that has translated into what happens in the church life. And we've come back to this statement.
Yep.
The vision is to be a light shining forth, illuminating a dark world through the power of the Holy Spirit. And I'm so grateful that hasn't changed. But what this does is it centers us as we move forward because everything falls underneath this as we seek to fulfill what it is that God's called us to do.
And that's literally everything. The goal, it's okay to say the goal. What I try to aim to do here at Bay Harbor is from the little kids in the nursery all the way to the adults, the life groups, everything we want to be centered right around these words.
Well, and then to fulfill the mission is how we fulfill the vision, but that comes, and this is where we see it more concretely. It is to help people come to Christ, to grow in Christ, and to shine for Christ. And everything we do revolves around that mission, which helps us to fulfill the vision.
And I like it just to help people.
To help people, that's the beginning. Yeah. And so I don't know where you're wanting to go with this today, but I did not intend on this being the focus of the summer. Maybe I wasn't going to do it at all, and then maybe 1 or 2, but then it's turned into, I don't know, 6, 7, I don't know what it is, but we're getting close to the end of it. So yeah.
Are we really?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think maybe so.
Once again, great job on Sunday mornings. And I know you don't like taking credit for that, Pastor, but you do dig into the word and you listen to the Lord, you fast, you pray. And I appreciate you, and I know the church appreciates you. But you have been talking the last couple weeks about, there's been 2 names you keep mentioning.
Yep.
And it's funny because every time you mention them, we're going to get on to them eventually. Maybe not today, but But you have hit some stories about their life. But it's Dionysius and Damaris. They're found in Acts chapter 17.
Yes. And it's unusual for us to start a sermon at the very end and then work towards that. But that's the way the Lord has directed this. And I think it is important. We have, if you go back, we started in Acts 16 looking at Philippi, and then now we're in a whole different place. And part of the reason why the Holy Spirit may be directing us to Dionysius and Damaris is to understand the environment that they're in. They were in a very unique environment.
You're saying, okay, environment, place, environment. Explain a little bit. Where were they at?
Well,
Athens, right? Was it Athens?
They were in the ancient city of Athens, and Jennifer and I recently were blessed to be there, to walk on the ground, to experience that, and it was a very humbling experience for me. But I also felt the spiritual darkness that they would have been living in, and really that they would have been ignorant of living in, because it was just something that was natural to them. When you see someone or someone comes to Christ and they have the illumination of the word in their life or who Jesus is in their life, it completely changes them because they haven't never seen before what they're experiencing now. You don't necessarily see the darkness when you're so accustomed to living inside of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes complete sense. So when you and Sister Jennifer were able to go and be in Athens, you just said you still felt the spirits and stuff. Did they still worship those gods? Do they still have that going on there now currently? Or I'm sure some do, but is it a
They do. They do. The temple area of the Acropolis is not actively a place of worship. Now, it's interesting that there was a news article for several years ago that there was some pagan cults that wanted to go there and to do worship. And it was a big ordeal there in the Department of Religion in Greece. But yeah, no, even though those temples and all that's not there, the spirits that drive them are very much alive in that place.
Yeah. So before we go into the spirits and what they represented, because I remember a couple weeks ago when you preached, it was great, but I just flipped across what I see on my computer here. It says, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was deeply troubled by all the idols he saw everywhere in the city. And my mind just went to when I go into the school system, when I go into the community, when I go here or go there, it is troubling. It is troubling. And you're right. Like you just said, sometimes people don't, I'm not judging. Please, you know that.
No. I got you.
Sometimes people that get wrapped up in it and that's what they know, there's nothing different about it. Am I making sense?
There's nothing out of the way with it because it's just something that they're accustomed to. And that right there, that verse right there really hits me. So as we're going through this journey on this episode, what happens if we put our minds in the place that Paul was walking in, but we can't lose sight of Dionysus and Damaris? Dionysus and Damaris are lost. They are living in darkness. They're without Jesus Christ. There's so much that's happening with them. And yet Paul is there. He's waiting on his companions to come because trouble ran him out of town. Now he's there and he just does what he does. He can't sit still. A little ADHD or something like that going on with Paul, but he's passionate about the kingdom. And being passionate about the kingdom, I think personally, as I look at Paul's missionary strategy, and it's something that I try to implement whenever I go anywhere, is to see what's happening in the local community, not necessarily to reach them or anything like that, but to walk around and see what was going on. Obviously, Paul spent time walking around Athens to identify what was going on.
Yeah. You just mentioned missionary journeys and I think in the context of going other countries and stuff, but like I just mentioned the school.
That's going out, period.
Yes.
Being out, period.
Out of your home.
Look around your neighborhood and what do you see? Drive through town and see what it is that's around you. What are you seeing? What do you identify? And it will really shake you if you will ask the Lord to allow you to see what Jesus would see if Jesus was walking or driving by.
Wow. I think you mentioned 3 different spirits. Wasn't it 3 that you actually pulled out that really control a lot of the environments that we are around today, that I say we're around, that we live in the midst of it sometimes?
Yeah, well, obviously he identified idolatry as one, and with that would come sorcery, which would, how they would worship. But I see in that area in particular 3 primary spirits that would activate the worship to those gods.
Yeah. So the idolatry. Let's back up. Idolatry. In his case, he saw things. He saw statues, golden, whatever they're made of, right? Little trinkets.
Yep.
Got my phone here, whatever that were idolatry.
Yep.
In our lives today, there's so many things we can make idols.
It's true. It is so true. And I'll probably go home and watch television at some point, But I think about when you walk into a living room, in most living rooms across the nation, you will see a stand with a box on top of it. And I have often wondered if that's not an idol that we've set up in our own homes.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not preaching against TV now.
No, I'm not, because but I think it's one of those that we have to watch. Yeah. Everything we have to watch and make sure we filter it through the mind of Christ.
And I didn't pick the phone up on purpose to say a phone.
Right.
I was just talking about a trinket or something, but even a phone.
Yeah. See, now this is getting convicting. We need some kind of something to just break it up. But there is
push the button.
There is truth with that, and I think there's a caution with that we didn't intend on getting on.
No, we didn't mean to hit there. So let's move the spirit. let's move on.
Yeah.
So these spirits, that the different gods that were worshipped then, that had a spirit about them, had something there.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that they were going through that Paul saw that actually was hindering the move of God in that place?
It's interesting that when you get to the Acropolis area that Paul would have walked in, literally would have walked in, that it was about 500 years that some of those temples have been erected. Great feat of architecture and engineer to make that happen. But there was, we forget because we see the ruins, but there was actual worship that was going on there. One of them is as he was standing on the Acropolis, and as we did, we could look out and see the ruins of the temple of Zeus, and Zeus being the chief god. And I'm just pulling this from memory, but he being the chief god that was the supreme one is who they would have worshipped. And his life was characterized by anger and by violence. And the worship that was given to him followed suit with that. When you had the Olympic Games and the different activities that would revolve around worship to him, the boxing, the wrestling, things like that would really be brutal. It really would be. And there is a spirit that we can open ourselves up. And when I say that, I'm really not talking about believers. Now, believers can be impacted by the spirits.
Yeah.
But I'm more so talking about unbelievers who open themselves up to demonic activity. And so I know this is a difficult subject, but so you when you see that, we see it manifested today, and road rage. We gave examples of just somebody walking up and cutting someone on the street for no reason. There are numerous reports right now of people who are beating up the elderly or the homeless. There's a spirit of rage that is going on in this world today.
And I don't think that's getting upset with your kids for not making their bed or in their house, but
no.
You know, not doing something.
No.
It's different. It's different.
It is demonic.
Yeah.
And that's the difference with it.
So that's one of the spirits that we battle today. And if we're not careful, what's another? I think on the notes you mentioned Dionysius was the next one.
Yes, and it's not to be confused with the one that we're talking about. No.
Got it.
This would have also been a god, and he was a god of wine and vegetation. So all the agriculture, all of that. And so his was really at a place where anything goes. And so his worship, there was a theater that Jennifer and I actually got to see, that they would do the Greek plays. There would be a sacrifice to the god that would be there. All this was going on, and it was their way of escaping the pains that they were going through, to escape the reality of what they were facing. And so you have all these great Greek stories that came out of that, but it revolved around a festive party atmosphere that was uninhibited. Anything you wanted to do, you could do. And I mean, Pastor Bobby, we don't have to search far to see how that is affecting us today.
Yeah, in the form of drugs and alcohol. And
specifically.
Yeah.
Specifically.
I tell you, drugs and alcohol, Pastor, we had Shane's Crib come a couple weeks ago here at the church, and to hear their testimonies and even testimonies of people I know personally who have been through things, family members who are have been through things. I'm looking at myself with this.
Yeah.
And not that I've ever been on the using end, but on the, I guess maybe you call it the receiving end, or the trying to help end, and of someone who struggles with that. And it is yeah.
Well, even my family, and through this, with my grandmother passing recently, we had someone send a donation to the church in honor of my grandmother, but to go into my cousin's fund that helps with situations like this, like it does at Shane's crib. And it's a very real. She overdosed, and it was to escape pain. Whatever her rationale was, it was there, but it's real, and the effects of it are huge. And so when we see the explosion of what is happening, and sometimes I think we forget that when we see someone that has gone down a path to where they have ended up where they are because of the use of drugs, we forget the story of what got them there. You don't start out as you don't start out as a heart addict. You start out subtly, and then you work your way into it.
Even in alcohol, people can debate whatever. But ultimately, I don't believe anybody takes a drink of alcohol within mind, I'm going to be an alcoholic. I'm going to be addicted to this stuff. I'm going to have it every day of my life from 10 o'clock on. People don't do that.
No. And with that, I'm hoping we can end this part of the conversation, because I can feel the heaviness of it. But isn't it ironic that Jennifer and I were walking through a city of ruins, and what these gods do, what these spirits do, is they cause our life to end up in the same place.
Absolutely.
Always ends up in ruins.
And it's just opening yourself up to it.
Opening yourself up.
Wow. So there's another one. Aphrodite.
Yep. The goddess of really erotic love is what she was.
And let's get into this one a little bit, because the world we live in today is all about, almost as bad as the 60s, the free love, right? You know what I mean? It's just everybody's just do what you do what you want to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so insatiable is the word that I would use to describe her personality, but also her worship, the worship that was given to her. Insatiable means I can't get enough. So she was one, and I brushed over this in the message. I remember, because I don't know how many affairs that she had. I don't know how many relationships that she was involved with. And so in her story, it is true of lust. I can't get enough. Insatiable really fits more to me than lust, because there are people who are confused when it comes to the issue or the area of sexuality, and they're not satisfied with who they are or what they have. They want more. And so when this spirit opens up, it really becomes perverse. And her worship was one that was really, really perverse.
In the sexual form.
In the sexual realm. Now, Paul would leave Athens and go to Corinth. In chapter 18 of Acts, he goes to Corinth. Corinth had one of the main temples to her, and it was believed that they employed 1,000 temple prostitutes. And some would be there to help with fertility. Some would be there just for the worship, to try to please her, all these different things. But there again, it leads to death. It leads to ruin. Sin always does that.
And again, like we mentioned with the alcohol and the drug use, you don't go down that road thinking, hey, this is going to be me.
It's okay. It's just, and sometimes it just may be even something that feels right. Yeah. That's not it. That's not what it is. And when these two combine together, when these three spirits in particular work, because they often work together, either between two or all three of them, you see how strong that attachment can happen in our lives.
So what do we do?
That's the good news.
That's it. So we're here. We live in this world, and these spirits are still raging strong. We just established that. Bottom line, you know that you have felt them yourself. Those listening, you felt it, you hear it, you see it, you watch the news. Yeah. This stuff's raging.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah, that we do what Paul did.
Okay.
That is the beauty of this story. And sometimes you have to get through those turbulent times, those turbulent stories like we just had, to get to the truth of what's really going on. And I'm so grateful that Paul didn't stay in his hotel room ordering room service, but he went out. He was so troubled by what he did. He was moved. And that's where the vision comes in. That's what we want to see. God has called us to be a light shining in a dark world. We can't do it by ourselves. It's got to come through the power of the Holy Spirit. That's the only way that this is going to work. And so Paul went, first of all, he went to the church house. He went to the synagogue. He went to try to tell the people, which tells me that there was at least 10 Jewish men that were in Athens in order for there to be an established synagogue. So there was one. But obviously not a lot happened with that. So the next thing we see in Paul is in the marketplace. He's on the street corner. He's at Walmart. And as people happen to walk by, he's telling them. And what he tells them is important.
What did he tell them?
He told them about Jesus and the resurrection. That is everything they needed to know was summed up in Jesus and the resurrection.
I would love to be on that street corner and hear how, not just what he said, but how he said it. Because I think that can go a long way sometimes, even with us trying to do and be that light. If we're not cautious, we may have the right words, but the wrong attitude, the wrong delivery, and mess some things up.
It can, and that's why he was jumping to the resurrection. The resurrection would be a key theme for Paul's life. It is essential for us as believers. It changes everything for us as a believer. But he would so much so that there's been a lot of scholars who have criticized him because he didn't necessarily preach the cross. You can't preach Jesus without the cross. But he highlighted the resurrection because of the context that he was in. That was what they needed. Only Jesus can bring you out of the ruins of your life and can change you to who you are. Only through the resurrection. If God raised him from the dead, he can raise you up out of what you're in right now. And that was the message that Paul wanted to preach to him.
Yeah. So if you're listening today, maybe you are struggling with some of these things or even other things we didn't mention today. And you're saying, hey, how do I get out of it? First of all, you just listen, first of all, Jesus and the resurrection, and give your life to him and watch him do great things. So what if you know someone that's struggling? What do we do? What do we do as a church? You just said it, we got to preach it, but how do we do it? Practical ways. In this way, we got a few minutes.
Yeah.
Practical ways. How could someone listen today who has someone in their life struggling and maybe not a believer? What can we do to change that?
It is speaking the truth. It is speaking the truth in love. Jesus came in grace and truth. It is the message of the gospel, and that's where this part comes in. That's where the fulfillment of what God's called us to is he's called us to be the Pauls that are going after the Dionysies and the Damarises, those who are out there that don't even know that they need help, but we can't reach people that we're not around. We can't reach people unless we know the truth of the gospel ourselves, and we can't reach them if we're silent. So it is, and that's tough for me. I'm telling you, this is convicting. I'm an introvert by nature, and so it's difficult. But you said something. You may not have even been aware of what you were saying as you were saying it, but you teed it up perfectly with this. Before we can ever minister to others, it's not in a place of judgment. You were right. It is the way that we say things that will have a good impact on them. But I can't minister what I haven't experienced as far as, now I'm not talking about specifics. So I can minister to someone who has been in an adulterous relationship, even though I haven't been in that myself. There's ways that I can relate to people that way. I'm talking about the gospel. I can't share the gospel of Jesus Christ with others if I haven't experienced it. But before I go telling others, I've got to remove the plank in my own eye before I worry about the speck of dust in theirs. So that's why we go out, but that's why God touches us. He does a work inside of our lives to prepare and position us to make a difference in somebody else's life.
That's a good way to end it. Hey, guys, we thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Be blessed.